She was a vibrant young woman and a man trapped in solitude. A friendship that breaks all barriers arises when secrets are revealed and forbidden desires manifest. Amina faces a decision that could change everything. How far would you go for a new beginning? Don't miss this intense story filled with unexpected twists. Matthias, a 70-year-old man, walked slowly through the streets of his small village, feeling the weight of the years and the absence that had accompanied him since his wife passed away 5 years ago. He and Maria had a harmonious marriage, a love that endured through time and life's challenges. They were an active couple. Together, they shared joyful moments, and the complicity between them was evident to all. She was the sunshine of his life, and when she left, darkness filled his days. Since then, Matthias had avoided the social gatherings he once enjoyed. His walks to the market had become quick and purposeless, just to secure basic supplies. The gentle wind rustled the trees of the small village when Amina, a young African woman, arrived for the first time at a place that would soon become her new home. Coming from a distant continent, the vitality and energy she brought starkly contrasted with the almost paralyzed tranquility of the village. Her curious eyes and warm smile drew attention, especially from the older residents, who were used to the monotonous rhythm and lack of youth. However, Amina brought something different, something that made her special in that forgotten corner of the world. She soon stood out. Her presence was felt at every corner, in the streets, in the small markets, and in the city park where she liked to sit and read. Children ran beside her, enchanted by her energy, while adults watched her from afar, commenting among themselves about the new girl in the village. Although her appearance and background were different from what they knew, it didn't take long for her friendliness and kindness to win over most hearts. There was something in Amina that transcended cultural differences, a light she carried within her, illuminating even the grayest days. It was on one of those seemingly ordinary days that Matthias encountered her for the first time. As usual, he had gone out to buy some supplies at the local shop. His legs, already tired from the years, moved slowly through the narrow streets. He entered the shop, purchased what he needed, and as he exited, felt the bags weighing more than he could carry. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to balance the packages. He was about to stop and rest when he heard a soft, kind voice behind him. "Can I help you?" Amina asked, with a welcoming smile. Matthias, surprised, turned slowly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, he was left speechless. He wasn't used to such kindness. For years, he had lived alone, accustomed to not depending on anyone. Yet, the young woman seemed genuinely willing to help. After a brief moment of hesitation, he accepted. "It would be a great help, if it's not too much trouble," he replied, with a shy smile. Amina took one of the heavy bags with ease, and they began walking together through the quiet streets. At first, the walk continued in silence, but Amina, always curious and friendly, broke the ice. "My name is Amina. I moved here recently. I'm studying at the local university," she explained enthusiastically. "Oh, yes, the university. It's been a long time since I've seen anyone new around here." "My name is Matthias, I've lived in this village for many years," he responded. The kindness in Amina's words was something Matthias hadn't heard in a long time. Her energy contrasted sharply with the monotonous and solitary life he led. As they walked, Matthias found himself observing the young woman with curiosity. She seemed to carry the world lightly, while he could barely bear the weight of his own memories. "I like it here. It's quiet, but different from where I grew up. At first, it was hard to adapt, but now I feel at home," Amina said, breaking the silence as she looked around. Matthias nodded, still surprised by the naturalness of the conversation. For him, each step felt like an effort, not just physically, but also emotionally. However, beside Amina, something within him calmed. It was as if, for the first time in years, he could relax. Upon reaching his front door, he turned to thank the young woman. "Thank you so much, Amina. I don't know what I would have done without your help," he said. She smiled again, one of those smiles that seemed to bring light wherever she went. "It was nothing, Matthias. If you need help, don't hesitate to ask me," she said before saying goodbye and continuing on her way. Matthias stood still for a moment, watching as Amina walked away down the street. His heart, which had been closed to the world for years, felt a slight stir. That young woman had somehow broken the barrier he had raised after the death of his wife. The simple gesture of helping with groceries had turned into something much greater, the beginning of a connection he had never expected, but which was already starting to transform his life. Amina's life had completely changed since she left her family and friends in her homeland to seek new opportunities. The young woman, determined to broaden her horizons, saw in her studies a chance to achieve dreams that seemed distant in her small African village. With a scholarship secured at a local university, she threw herself into this new phase, even if it meant distancing herself from those she loved. The farewell was hard, tears and promises to return soon filled the bus station. But Amina knew her departure would be definitive for a good while. It was time to grow and follow her own path. Now, in a distant and unknown village, Amina felt the weight of loneliness. The first days were especially tough. She had not yet formed bonds with anyone, and calls home were not always enough to fill the void she felt. However, Amina was a young woman with a strong and hopeful spirit. Despite the challenges, she believed this new phase of her life would bring rewards beyond the education she sought. And, in a way, she was right. People watched her with curiosity, and the men, especially the younger ones, quickly showed interest. With her braided hair and contagious smile, Amina radiated an energy that seemed to renew the atmosphere around her. It was common to see her approached in markets or on the streets by men who admired her from afar. Among them stood Masi, a local young farmer known for his friendliness and good looks. Masi, tall and robust, took an interest in Amina from the very first moment. He often saw her in the market, buying fruit or strolling through the town square with her books. Her confidence and determination made her attractive, and he wasted no time trying to get closer to her. One afternoon, while Amina was sitting in the park reading, he approached her with a smile. "Hi, Amina, right?" he said, trying to sound relaxed. "I always see you around here. You're a student, aren't you?" Amina, not looking up from her book, returned the smile, acknowledging the interest in Masi's tone. She had noticed the looks she received from the village men, and although it made her a bit uncomfortable at first, it also sparked her curiosity. She was young, full of life, and the idea of meeting someone interesting was not entirely unpleasant. "Yes, I'm studying at the local university," she replied, friendly but cautious. "And you, do you work here?" "Yes, I'm a farmer. I take care of my family's crops." "It's not very exciting, but it's honest work," Masi said, smiling, trying to impress her with his modest tone. Amina smiled back, and the conversation continued lightly, but she wasn't completely convinced of Masi's interest. There was something superficial in his advances. Although he was nice, Amina wasn't looking for a relationship at that moment. She had left her home to focus on her studies, and that priority still remained. However, like any young woman, she couldn't deny that the idea of finding someone who understood her and accompanied her on her journey was something she would eventually like to explore. As Masi tried to win her attention, Amina continued her routine in the village. And it was in that routine that her encounters with Matthias became more frequent. The elderly man, always discreet, began to feel something different. Amina's initial gesture of helping him with his groceries was just the beginning of a friendship he never expected to form. The connection between them grew naturally, with conversations in the park or brief encounters in the market. Whenever they saw each other, there was an exchange of smiles and a brief dialogue about everyday life. For Matthias, Amina was a ray of light in his lonely life. Every time he encountered her, something within him seemed to awaken. It had been so long since he felt the joy of having company, of talking with someone about trivial things, or just being present. He began to look forward to the moments when he would see her. Every walk he took now, he hoped to spot her in the distance, walking through the streets with her books and that smile that had already become familiar to him. However, as this friendship grew, Matthias began to notice something different. What had once seemed like simple gratitude for Amina's presence was now transforming into a more complex feeling. He started to see her in a different light. Her youth, vitality, and energy awakened feelings in Matthias that he hadn't experienced in years. Loneliness had made him shut himself off from those emotions, but beside Amina, something new stirred in his heart. He felt attracted to her, not in a predatory or inappropriate way, but as someone who had forgotten for a long time what it was like to have another person by his side. Amina, for her part, also began to see Matthias differently. Although the village men, like Masi, showed interest in her, it was in Matthias that she found a sense of peace and wisdom. He was like a safe harbor, someone who wasn't interested solely in her appearance or youth, but who listened to her attentively, offered advice, and cared about her well-being. With each conversation, Amina admired Matthias's life story, his patience, and the way he faced the world around him. Over time, this friendship became increasingly significant for both of them. One day, Amina entered Matthias's small house with a face marked by sadness and a lost look. She had just received the news that her scholarship had been cancelled for administrative reasons, and without that financial aid, paying rent and continuing her studies would be impossible. Sitting at the kitchen table, her hands trembled as she tried to hold back her tears. Matthias, always attentive, noticed the distress on the young woman's face and approached her carefully. "What happened, dear?" he asked softly and with concern. Amina sighed, struggling to respond. "I lost my scholarship, Matthias. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Without it, I can't pay rent, and I can't go back home," not after all the effort I made to get here." Matthias looked at her tenderly, feeling the pain she carried. He knew how hard Amina had fought to continue her studies, what she had sacrificed to be there. Without hesitation, he made a decision. "You don't have to go back home," he said firmly. "You can stay here with me for as long as you need. This house is big enough for both of us, and you shouldn't give up on your dreams because of a difficulty like this." Amina looked at him, surprised and touched. "Matthias, I don't know if I can accept this. I don't want to be a burden to you." "You're not a burden, Amina. This house has been so empty since Maria left. Having you here would be a joy for me, truly. Besides, you need to keep studying. You can't leave everything behind." After a pause, Amina nodded, a small smile on her face. "Thank you so much, Matthias. I don't know how to thank you." Over time, their living together became natural. Amina occupied one of the rooms and, in gratitude, helped Matthias with small chores around the house. They shared meals, talked about the past and the future, and the bond between them continued to grow. Amina trusted Matthias deeply, feeling he was the anchor that kept her steady amid the storms. Meanwhile, Masi kept trying to get closer to Amina. He invited her out on a sunny afternoon, and they met in the town square. Masi was visibly interested, looking at Amina with admiration and trying to win her attention. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," Masi said as they walked side by side. "And I have to say, you're an impressive woman." Amina smiled, grateful for the compliment, but without letting herself be completely swayed. A part of her was worried about the direction this conversation could take. However, Masi continued to show his interest directly. "But isn't it strange that you live with old Matthias?" Masi asked, with a tone of suspicion in his voice. "I mean, he's a good man, but why did you agree to live with him?" Amina paused for a moment, feeling the discomfort in the question. She knew that many in the village found her living situation with Matthias strange, but the truth was that he had become an essential figure in her life. "Masi, Matthias is a great friend. He helped me in a difficult time, and now we're like family." "There's nothing strange about that," Amina replied firmly. Masi tried to hide his discomfort, but he couldn't mask the doubt in his gaze. He wanted something more with Amina, but the closeness she had with Matthias seemed like an obstacle he didn't know how to overcome. Meanwhile, Amina began to realize that, although she liked Masi, her feelings for Matthias were deeper and more complex than she had imagined. Rumors about the closeness between Matthias and Amina started to circulate quickly in the small village. It was inevitable that in such a small, close-knit community, where everyone knew each other's lives, something out of the ordinary would become the main topic of conversation. Matthias, a 70-year-old man, and Amina, a vibrant young African woman, living under the same roof. That was enough to spark curiosity and distrust among the residents. Whispers in the markets and corners of the village grew more frequent. What's happening there, they wondered, speculating about the nature of the relationship between the two. Amina, although aware of the rumors, tried to ignore them. For her, the relationship with Matthias was special, built on mutual respect and trust. He had welcomed her in a moment of difficulty, offering a home when she needed it most. It didn't matter what others thought, Amina knew her friendship with Matthias went beyond the malicious interpretations of the village. She continued with her daily routine, focused on her studies and grateful for Matthias's presence in her life. However, what Amina didn't know was that Matthias was also dealing with his own feelings. Though he maintained a calm and friendly demeanor, inside, there was a growing confusion. He didn't know how to handle the feelings that had slowly emerged for Amina. The time they spent together had made him rediscover emotions he believed were buried since his wife's death. There was a mixture of gratitude, affection, and a physical attraction he couldn't ignore. One night, as silence filled the small house, Matthias decided to share his thoughts with Amina. He didn't want to carry this weight alone and felt she deserved to know what was on his mind. "Amina, can I talk to you?" Matthias asked hesitantly as he approached her, sitting in the living room, reading a book. "Sure, Matthias." "What's going on?" she asked, concerned about the serious tone of his voice. Matthias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words before speaking. "There's something I need to tell you, something I've never shared with anyone. I don't know if it will be easy for you to hear, but I feel I must be honest." Amina looked at him, curious and a bit apprehensive. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew Matthias was not a man who often spoke about his personal feelings. "Since you came into my life, Amina, something has changed in me. I didn't expect to feel this again, not at my age, but the truth is that I feel attracted to you in a way I can't control. I know there's a big difference between us, and I don't expect you to feel the same, but I needed to be honest." Matthias lowered his head, embarrassed by his words. Amina fell silent for a moment, processing what she had just heard. She had always seen Matthias as a friend, almost like a father figure, but now, in light of that confession, everything felt different. There was a mix of feelings inside her: surprise, confusion, and perhaps something deeper she didn't know how to name at that moment. "Matthias, I didn't expect this. You've always been very kind to me. I didn't know you felt this way," Amina said hesitantly. "But I promise I will think about what you said." That night, something unexpected happened. Amina, who initially felt uncomfortable, began to see Matthias from a new perspective. She remembered how he had helped her, how he always treated her with respect. And somehow, the idea of being so connected to him began to make sense. They both ended up emotionally involved, and Amina, surprisingly, started to feel something she had never experienced before. The next morning, as she left for the village, Amina encountered Masi on the way. The young man who had shown so much interest in her seemed happy to see her, but Amina carried a heavy conscience. She knew she couldn't move forward with Masi without being honest. "Masi, we need to talk," Amina said, her voice laden with guilt and uncertainty. Masi frowned, noticing something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, concerned. Amina took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I can't keep seeing you like this. Something happened, and I need to be honest with you." "What do you mean?" Masi asked, his voice full of frustration. "What happened?" Amina looked away, unable to meet his gaze directly. "I and Matthias," she began, but her voice broke. "We got involved. I didn't plan it, and I know it sounds strange, but I can't keep lying to you." Masi stood frozen for a moment, shock and anger mixing on his face. "What are you saying? Amina, you with old Matthias? How did that happen?" She lowered her head, unable to respond immediately. "I don't know. It was something that just happened, and now I don't know what to do." The silence between them was heavy. Masi was still trying to process what he had just heard and shook his head in disbelief. But after a few moments, he took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Amina, this is crazy. But if you think you made a mistake, you can get out of this situation. I'll help you. If you want, you can come live with me until you finish your studies. When it's all over, we'll leave here together and go to the city." Amina looked at Masi, still confused and hurt, but his words touched her. He was offering her a way out, something that seemed impossible not long ago. Although she was upset about losing her friendship with Matthias, she knew Masi was offering her a new opportunity. "Okay, Masi. I accept," she said, her voice soft, almost sad, but full of determination. Together, they walked back to Matthias's house, where Amina packed her things with a heavy heart. Masi accompanied her in silence as she said goodbye to a phase of her life she never expected to end this way. As Amina left Matthias's house, she felt torn between the desire to move on and the sense of loss for everything she and Matthias had shared. If you were Amina or had to advise her, what advice would you give? Comment below what you think of this story and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, please. The story of Amina and Matthias teaches us that the paths of life are not always linear or easy to understand. It shows how the decisions we make, no matter how unexpected or difficult they may seem, shape our future and bring important lessons. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where our morality and desires are in conflict. But it is in those moments that divine wisdom can guide us. As it is written in Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." Amina, reflecting on her life and decisions, found the strength to make a choice, seeking the path she considered most right. This story reminds us of the importance of trusting in God, especially in times of uncertainty, knowing he always has a plan to guide us, even when the road seems confusing.